Rona. Nice to see you.
You too.
You came to repolish your Flutter skills?
Oh yeah, every day.
Which GDG are you? I don't remember.
Me? I'm not a GDG.
No? Ah, because I saw you in Flutterista, that's why I was thinking.
Nope.
Okay. Another few minutes, we will start. If you want to write in chat, where are you joining us from? That would be nice. I already know a few people that joined earlier. So let's see, Chicago area, Denver, Colorado. New Delhi, India. Fremont, California. Buenos Aires, Argentina. Nice.
The world's coming to an end. Who let Yoda in the building?
Oh man, 2:30 a.m. here. Lol, where? Portland, Oregon.
I'm here for you, Scott.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello in the wall. I saw you.
Hey, Scott.
You too, Rona.
Hey, Scott.
Alrighty. As I said, I know folks are coming in. But yeah, we've got folks here from the Middle East and Europe and everything. So whenever you're ready, Linda.
Yeah, let's wait another 3 minutes. Let's start like 5 minutes. What do you think?
Alrighty.
And we will go from there. Okay, thank you. 12 a.m. over here. Wow. Guys, you are heroes. I think, Scott, all of them are for you. Sleep. Wait, what it says. Sleep is for the weak. Yeah, you are strong heroes here. 5 a.m. in Columbus, 5 p.m. in Columbus, Ohio. Anyone got beer? Yeah. Yeah. New Delhi, India, Denver, Colorado, Chicago. We have somebody from, I think from Romania, because I talked with him earlier. We have from Argentina and Portugal, I think, Ecuador, Chicago, Windy City. No more windy though. Ah, okay, that's nice. Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. So as you can see, we are kind of international. Another minute we will start, guys. So.
Linda?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind. We got it.
Hamburg. Okay, so I would say let's start. Let's begin the party, and I will have only some small announcements in the beginning, and I will hand it over to Scott as soon as possible. So let's go. As you know, we are recording this meetup. So turn on your video camera during the workshop. We want to encourage face-to-face interaction amongst the participants. Keep your microphone muted if you are not talking during the presentation. We try to be an inclusive meeting, so be excellent with each other. We have a code of conduct to follow. If you have any questions, I will provide you with for the Q&A session with the Slido link. Socialize or network in the Google Meet chat. So the meetup is recorded. If you don't like to be in the recording, please turn off your camera or change your name and things like this. There might be technical or personal interruptions during our event, and we will apologize in advance. If you like to share our event in the social networks like LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, feel free to tag us and use the hashtags GDG, WTM, and Flutter. And here is the agenda, the opening remarks, and some announcements. And after that, I will head it over to Scott to present Flutter state management with provider. And following that, we will have a Q&A. And after that, we'll have the wrap-up closing comments and some announcements. I will provide you quickly in the chat with the question form where you can go to address your questions. It's very difficult in the chat to follow the questions. So if you post your questions in Slido, it will be easier to present them to Scott and to answer your questions. So if you want to socialize, you can use the chat, but for the questions, please use the Slido. Here are some of our sponsors, and we will have some small or big, as you want, some free prizes for everyone. O'Reilly offers to all attendees 30 days full access to their online library, a value worth of $49 for access to our online library. After I finish to do all the presentations, I will provide you with all the links in chat. Also, we will have a discount of 20% of Practicum Bootcamp to any course to choose from web developer, data scientist, and data analyst. And Developer has a groundbreaking program to get underpaid women in tech access to its award-winning salary negotiation program. And I will send you all those links as soon as Scott will start his presentation. Before I head it over to Scott, I would like to tell you a few words about Scott. Scott has been involved with Flutter since version 0.0.14 alpha, working both nationally and internationally as a Flutter application developer and content creator. Additionally, he's spoken and taught on Flutter at conventions, events in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom, as well as many smaller groups and meetups organizations through the United States. He also possesses an Android developer nano degree from Google Udacity. So now I will head it over to Scott, and I will leave you in his hands.
Oh, thank you very much, Linda. I hope everyone's having a great time this evening. Presenting remotely is always an interesting experience. Normally, you rely on being able to see someone's face in order to know if you said something that went over their head or if your joke landed. Yeah, I can pretty much just give up on that one, except for a few of you. So, but we'll see what we can do here. Let me see here real quick. Just copying and pasting something right there. Now, provider. What we're going to be doing this evening is, since we have supposedly just under 200 RSVPs, I'm going to assume we have every single experience level in the entire room. I'm sorry, in the room. Then what we will do is we'll start taking a look at what is state, then we'll roll right into provider. We're not going to get too overly deep into it, but we are going to move kind of fast. So I don't want to lose anyone who's brand new, but at the same time, I don't want to bore a bunch of people because I do see a whole lot of more advanced Flutter developers here as well. And when we get done taking a look at provider and the general uses of it, then we can turn around and start taking a look towards the future. So, and that is pretty interesting. So again, if you're more advanced, especially, don't run away. There's a little bit of a surprise coming later, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So with that, let's take a look at provider. So first of all, what is state? Okay, and in essence, what state is, it is your car is red. Okay, well, that's the state of the car. The engine is running. That's the state of the engine and the state of the car. So what we need to do is we need a way in our apps to keep track of the state of all these different things. Are the tires flat or are they inflated? Is the engine running? What color is the car?
Can I interrupt you 1 second? I think your slides are very small. Can anyone see the slides big enough? Are you sharing your screen?
Oh, good point here.
No, that's fine. I think you're not zoomed in. Just pin their screen, and that'll be good. Just pin.
Yeah, it's not. The thing is, it's not a screen. It is. I'm feeding you OBS the whole thing.
I don't see your screen. I don't know how will be the recording at this point. Let me point. Let me see if I can.
Oh.
Okay, give me just 1 second.
Okay, no, I see how to. I think I see how to do this.
Yep. Can you?
Give me a moment.
Otherwise, I will have to switch my recording.
This is okay. Hang on. Preview.
If not, I can pin that thing once.
No, I got it. Just takes a lot of. Just takes some.
I'm sorry, guys.
Some quick thinking. Yeah, sorry about that. I did not realize it was doing that. How's that? Oh, wait. It's still
much
loading.
better. Much better. Great.
Okay. So, as I was saying, what state is, okay, is the car moving? Is it sitting still? Now, when you think about state, they say there are two kinds. There's app state and there's ephemeral state. I don't know why they decided to use the big crazy word, because the ephemeral state is the state of any individual object. Now, that can get a little bit confusing because you have a car and the car has an engine. So let's say you take the engine from off to on. Well, you change the state of the engine, but did you change the state of the car? And did you change the state of the app? And the answer is yes to all the above. Because the car, inside the car object, there is an engine. So if the engine changes, that changes something in the car. So keeping track of all this can get rather interesting. And that's the art of state management. Now, when you really break it down, we had this discussion a couple of months ago. What we all call state management really isn't so much managing the actual state. What it is notifying the rest of the app that something in the state changed. So you might want to think of that as state notification. But if you do, you're probably going to be the only one because everybody else is calling it state management. So we may as well just stick with that. That was a joke. Is anybody laughing at all? All right. So provider. As of, there we go, 2019 is the recommended way to do state management for apps of all sizes, large, small, you name it. That came directly from Chris Sells, the project manager of Flutter itself. Now, package provider versus provider. Here's an interesting little history lesson for you. A gentleman whose name I will destroy, I'm sure, named Rémy Rousselet, created something called Provider. And he worked very hard on it, and he released it. And then about 48 hours later, the Flutter team released a package that did the exact same thing, and they called it Package Provider. And Remy is one of the people who's been around since the very beginning, so we all kind of know each other. And he raised up his hand and said, folks, look over here. And what had happened is the Flutter team had been working so hard with their head down, they weren't paying attention to what was going on outside the team. So they had no idea he had just released something 48 hours prior. So they did what any responsible team would do, and they sat down and they took Remy's apart and looked under the hood and gave it a thorough looking over. And in the end, they said, don't use ours, use his. Because the Flutter team actually liked Remy's better. So this is why you don't hear about the Flutter team's package provider. As far as I know, it may have just died and gone away. So that's a little bit of a history lesson. Now, when I first dug into provider, my head just about exploded with all this. Okay, I thought I was going to be looking into something called provider. And instead, what I got was everything from stream provider to change notifier provider to future provider, value listenable provider. I said, what in the world is all this? And there were, if I remember correctly, 15 classes, not one thing. So I'm sitting here thinking there's one job that needs to be done, right? Wrong. There are actually 3 jobs when you take a look at this. So if you break the problem down, you have a state, the state changes, and how are we going to handle it? It really comes down to 3 things. And it's a lot like being on a firefighting team. Now, I was in the Navy, I was on ships. Every single person on the ship has to be qualified to fight fires. If you don't get your qualifications passed in the first 6 months, they kick you off the ship. So they're very serious about this. But when you're fighting a fire on ship, there are 3 main jobs, okay? The first one is somebody's got to pull the alarm. Somebody's got to tell everyone that there's a fire, right? So we have to notify the listeners. Now, there's a function called notify listeners, and notifying is exactly what it does. Then number 3, there's the team who goes out there and it consumes the fire. Okay, puts it out, running around. There's a whole bunch of them. But if you'll notice, also, I'm sorry, you can have as many consumers or providers of water as you want. There's no limit. But what happened to number 2? Where did that go? Well, number 2 is my old job. That's the access man. What the access man does is if there is a fire and the team, there's the alarm, and then the team comes running, the door's closed. Well, on board a ship, a lot of times when you get a lot of heat, sometimes the steel doors twist their shape and now you can't get them open. So you need somebody to come running along with a great big hammer and smash the door open. That's fun. But anyway, back to today. The access man is going to expose the fire so the team can get to it. So someone has to pull the alarm and send notifications. Someone has to expose access to it, and then the team can go running in and consume the fire. Now, again, this is a very high-level overview for those who are new to Provider. So as we were just saying, someone has to pull the alarm and call notify listeners. This is where you will see your change notifier or value notifier. So if you see such and such a model extends change notifier, such and such a model extends value notifier. That's what's going on here. This is your object. This is where all of your class members are going to be. And when they change, the functions within it, the methods within that class, are going to end up calling notify listeners. So that's what the notifiers are doing. And as you can see right here, I tend to try to use very simple, almost stupid proof names. So this is our change notifier model. It extends change notifier. We have a string called the string that changes. Fancy, I know. Change the string is our function here. So we now change string that changes to the input, and the last thing we do, we notify all the listeners that something changed. So no matter what you're doing in here, the last step is to notify your listeners. Okay. Now, here's our example car. Final car will start is a Boolean. Okay. This is a value notifier of type Boolean. So what we think of as car will start as a Boolean, that's great. But the fact is, this actually has to be a value notifier, and the value of the Boolean is true. When that value changes, the value notifier will go notify the listeners. So here we have a car model, value notifier. This is a string, model S. So, okay, whoops. There we go. Try that one more time. We can toggle the car will start right here, and then we can toggle the model. Now, the interesting thing here, one thing I failed to mention, I'm sorry, is that we are using value notifiers. These value notifiers are going to be used in a different way, and they are notifying of only an individual variable, not the whole object. When you use a change notifier, it's going to notify of any any changes within the object as a whole. These are only going to trigger for the individual primitives. So here's job 2, giving access. So there's a change notifier provider. There's a regular provider, value listenable provider, stream provider, listenable provider, inherited provider, and the one that's being covered up is the future provider. Now, an interesting thing, if you try to actually just use a provider, the IDE is probably going to tell you to use something more specific. That's okay. But the one right here that's interesting is multi-provider. You see, if you're going to use multiple providers in your app without the multi-provider, you would have to start nesting them one within the other, and this can get pretty hairy. So multi-provider is, in essence, a list of all the other providers. So that makes your life quite a bit easier there. And as I mentioned, here we go with a multi-provider, the providers, the example car model. We have a builder, or we used to. The context returns the model instance. Value listenable provider, we're returning just the color. So the provider here is returning the entire instance of the car. This is only returning the color. And this can come in handy when you only really want to monitor one thing. So this is an interesting way to look at it. When you use a provider, one of the things to consider that Philip mentioned, Philip Trach, I believe, if I pronounced his name correctly, from the Flutter team did mention that you want to try to put these providers as far down as possible to prevent polluting the scope. What that basically means is that instead of sticking it at the very top of the app, as you will see in a lot of tutorials, you actually put it as the very last thing before calling the constructor of another widget. You need to call a constructor in order to get a new build context. Now, that's not the only way to get a new build context, but it's kind of the most popular one that people use. So, and the lower you put this, the more performant things are going to be. Sorry, the lower that you put your provider. The reason that you keep seeing these providers put at the very top of the widget tree at the start of the app is because these tutorial apps are so small. You would have to make extra nonsense just to be able to put it any deeper. And the tutorials are just trying to teach you what's going on. So they're going to be pretty simple. Alrighty. My other slides appear to have vanished on me. That's interesting. Well, let me see here. And then again, maybe not. Okay. Job number 3, the consumers. Now, these things are basically using the access. You have consumers of the fire or providers of, and you can think of it as providers of water. These are unlimited. You can have as many of these as you want. When you have a change notifier or a provider, you can only have one per type of listener. I'm sorry, one per object. That's because under the hood, what it's doing is when it gets notified of a change, it's going to go bubbling up through the tree until it finds the first instance of the type of object it's looking for. It's not going to be looking for a particular instance. It's going to be happy with any one it can find. So if you try to use more than one provider in the same tree at the same time, you're only ever going to be able to access the one that is the lowest in the tree, because that's the first one that is going to be run into. So the 3 ways that you typically use this are provider of, consumer, and selector. Consumer will trigger on any change in the object at all. Provider of, pretty much the same thing. It's a little easier to use in my estimation, although consumer does exist as a convenience object to make it easier to use provider of. That one right there is personal preference. But what's not personal preference is selector. What selector is going to do is it's going to get the same notification that consumer and provider of get, but then it's going to look and you will have told selector what it is you're interested in. So let's say your text says that the engine is running or the engine is off. Okay, fine. Does this text care if the tires are flat? Does the text care if the car is yellow or blue? No. So you have your selector monitored only for the Boolean of the engine being on or off. So the selector will still get notified of changes in the tires and the color, but it will ignore those, meaning that it will not rebuild its children. Whereas a consumer is going to rebuild its children no matter what, if there's any kind of change at all, even if its children don't use what has changed. So we get down in here. So use the providers in this widget extends the stateless widget. We can make an instance of the object above and return it to use below. In other words, provider of the accessed object equals provider.of change notifier model. So that's whatever model we're using. Let's say our car model. And what we can do there is then we can use provider of accessed object dot string that changes. We can use it like basically an instance of the class itself. In essence, makes it very easy to use once you set this up. Next, we could use it in line. Provider of change notifier model context dot string that changes. Notice these are the exact same thing. It's just that you created a variable that represented this. Then we can use a consumer inline and have it use its own tree. So right here, we have the same model. So the consumer is of that model type. We're going to have the builder, which takes our build context. We're going to make up a name for the instance. Doesn't matter. You can name it whatever you want. You could be really stupid about this and call it made up name for object instance. Right. Now, what this means right here is there is a child parameter that we're not using. So if you don't know what that is, the underscore basically means, yes, we acknowledge that there's a parameter there. No, we don't care. We're not using it. So then what we can do is we return text saying the value of my string that changes is, and then use it like any other string interpolation. And now we use this exactly as if it were an instance of the object itself. And we call that member right there. So, but again, this one right here, being a consumer, is going to rebuild this text even if something that has nothing to do with the text changes. So that's something to be aware of when you're dealing with a provider. A way around that is to use a value notifier. Whereas if this is listening for the string that changes and the string that changes is the value of a value notifier, then it will never change unless that particular value changes. So that's another way to do things. And I know we moved kind of fast. We moved kind of fast for a few reasons. But this is important right here. If you're fairly new to Flutter or if you don't know any of these, the getter, a lot of people involved in Flutter now have never heard of getter. I am so jealous. Really. Getter is the chat channel that every single GitHub repo, if I remember correctly, gets. So then what happened was, what happened then was Gitter's a single threaded chat. So as Flutter began to get more and more and more and more popular, suddenly you would get a question at 9 in the morning and maybe somebody wouldn't answer it until 11 in the morning. And in between there are about 250 other messages about every different kind of subject at every experience level. And if someone didn't at you, good luck, because you're reading every single one of those messages. So we ran away from that, and we put together the Flutter Community Slack. The Flutter Community Slack can be reached at the Flutter official website community page. So it's flutter.dev/community. And then you scroll down and you find the Slack. You go ahead and join there. There's no password or anything. It should let you right in. And as far as I know, that link should be good. It better be good. We had them generate one that was good for 10,000 invites. We're not there yet, or we shouldn't be. Anyhow, another great place to find help is the Flutter Dev Google group. If you take a look there, but make sure that you're looking at the Flutter-Dev Google group, not Flutter. On Reddit, again, Flutter Dev. Right there. On Medium, the Flutter team does have its own Medium publication, but the one we're pointing to here is the Flutter Community one. Flutter Community is basically a group of people who have been trying to put together good content for everyone since the beginning. It's difficult to pin down how many people there are actively involved with the community as they come in and go out. And sometimes things that are being done are kind of in parallel, such as if any of you know PK, Pawan Kumar, he also goes by MTech Viral on YouTube. He's not technically officially part of the Flutter community, but anything Flutter community would do in India, PK is the first person we call. He's the first one we lean on. He's been great. But anyway, the Medium here, is Flutter Community Medium. There are about 1.5 million minutes read by people every 30 days now, and it's growing fast. The Flutter Community page on Facebook, very low traffic. I need to fix that. I keep saying I need to fix that, but I actually do need to fix it and get on it. Twitter. There we go. Hashtag Flutter. The official Twitter is Flutter Dev. And if you want to find a whole lot of cool people, follow the one that this loser right here follows. Because I hear they... Okay. So, yeah. If you take a look at who that guy follows, you should be all right. Also, every Wednesday, we put together a little something called Hump Day Q&A. We haven't been advertising it lately just because everybody has been busy, but we are still there. So it's bit.ly, which gets covered. Thank you, Google. Cancel. bit.ly / Hump Day Q&A. That's HUMPDAYQANDA. Hump Day Q&A. So we were mentioning that we're going to take a look towards the future. And toward the future, Remy has put together something called RiverPod, which it looks like it may be the next iteration of Provider. So Remy was talking about the fact that there is a four fast hold with state notifier and freezed. These three together, Remy has said he believes are going to be good for the next iteration. In addition to those, we could optionally combine them with hooks. Now, if only Remy were here instead of away. Remy?
Yes, that was a weird introduction.
Okay, sorry. All righty, ladies and gentlemen, Remy. So, Remy, we just spent all this time talking about Provider, and you did this to me once before. Okay, last year in February, I was presenting in Chicago. Yeah, you remember this. I sat up all night finishing my talk, talking about the different ways that people could do state in Flutter. And of course, like any good presenter, I finished my slide in the middle of the night, slides in the middle of the night, and woke up the next morning feeling I had everything all set. I look in Slack, and who's there but Remy? All excited about how MobX is coming to Flutter.
Changement this year, specifically. And I've never been a fan of mutability and all of this kind of thing. And even if it's the simplest path for the community, I don't think it's on the wrong run the good thing to do. And so I've always been a fan of doing something like which has been popularized recently with Qubit with Felix by Felix, which is something very similar to what I've been doing for a while, since basically the start of Provider. That's how I used Provider myself when I used it personally, instead of using ChangeMontifier. But the only reason I didn't really push this approach is because, we don't have data classes in Dart, and we don't have copy and easy serialization and everything. And so it's kind of tedious to use immutability approach by default in Dart. And I'd never been a fan of build value. I think the trade-off is too big, like continuation slow down the process. But that's one problem. But there is also another problem about readability. In my opinion, it decreases readability a bit too much.
What?
Readability.
Readability. Okay.
Yeah, I think the code is not necessarily as readable as it could get. So, yeah, I don't really like build value. I think it's a great tool. It's just, I think it's not the best thing we could do. And so at some point when I experimented something, I came up with Freezed. And I think Freeze is a good middle ground until we have data classes. I think the community is quite liking it for now. And so yeah, so that kind of changed the idea of having immutable approaches. Like since we have Freeze, I think pushing immutability approaches is fine. So that's why I made more recently state notifier and this architecture to push immutability more. And
how does state notifier help that?
I think like the way a state notifier is used is not exactly the way you tend to use it, where you have one value notifier per property of your class. Instead, the difference is instead of subclassing change notifier or your subclass state notifier, you don't have one state notifier per property. And the basic idea is you have a single property for your state, and that state is a separate class, which is completely immutable, and it has copy with methods and things like this. So you have two classes in the end. You have your class, which contains just data, and a class which manipulates the data. And they interact together this way. There are a few examples, both on Qubit and on state notifier and Riverpod. You can look at all of them. They kind of do the same thing. So it's a good way to understand the concept more.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I'm following you correctly, basically Riverpod is a better replacement for change notifier, but it wasn't really practical without data classes, which Freezed kind of helps with that.
Not really.
No?
Not really. Riverpod is kind of solving different problems in such architecture. I mean, the issue with immutability is not there isn't just one problem. Like the architecture about immutability and provider and state notifier, when you combine all of them, you have a bunch of different issues happening. And like you have some issues with combining states. Like for example, a common request for providers users is, for example, they want to await for something to be loaded before creating the state. So they want to combine state asynchronously, but provider doesn't really help with this. You want to, how to say, like a common request is some extra flexibility about using stream provider. Like they want to combine stream providers or things like this. So yeah, in general, I think there are many issues that we could talk for hours about provider. And Riverpod tries to solve all of them differently with a different syntax to simplify overall how provider is used and try to be more natural to people. It does the same thing, it's just a different syntax. Whereas on the other side, state notifier is designed to be a replacement for change notifier. And state notifier is what introduced immutability, especially combined with Freeze. So you have to use both of these together to kind of get all the benefits.
Okay, fair enough. So, we have hit a point where it looks like things are solid enough that it's safe to start moving in this direction now. Because I remember before you were saying, don't go jumping in with production code yet because we needed to wait and see.
Yeah, I think the current version of Riverpod is good to use. Like you shouldn't have too much issues with it. Yeah, I think yes.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure that we will definitely have some more improvements in the future, but you should be able to do just fine. I think the current state is easier to use and usually better overall better designs than provider. So I think that you could definitely use it.
Okay. Very cool. All right, it's time for questions. And judging by the names that I see that are left in the chat, I think we're just getting to the good part for most of these folks. So, Linda, you want to handle that one?
Yeah, we don't have so many questions. We have only 2. Give me just 1 second. I will share my screen. And if anyone in here, since we are not so many, if you have any question, you can try to address it yourself. Be respectful. You see what happened. So that's the only one thing that I'm asking. Otherwise, if you can post them in the form, it will be great. One second, I'm sharing my screen here. I had the link before, but I have to use this one.
Do I need to drop my share, or can you just take it? Oh, there we go.
I think, give me just a second. Oh. Okay. With so many accounts, I don't even know which one. 1 second. Yeah, ask to join. No, give me just 1 second. I will join with the same account so I can share my screen. 1 second. It's kind of slow. Got it. Okay, so I'm almost there. Present now. Which one? Here. So far, can you see my screen? So far we have these 2 questions. So the first one is from Candy. Can you use the MVVM structure on provider, and how easy it is to do tests with MVVM with provider?
Do you want to take it, this one, Scott?
Unfortunately, I haven't. You know, I've been working with Simon, and you know how much he tests. So, yeah, I think this one's definitely.
To be honest, I never really used MVVM personally, so I don't think I can answer this question.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and the other thing too is I get a lot of questions about architecture, MVP, MVM, MVVM. The answer is always the same, really. If you're using one of those architectures with Flutter, it's basically like wearing a shoe that's just a little bit too big or too small. Yes, you can make it work. You can. But you can also run around wearing a shoe that's one size too big. It doesn't quite work the way things were intended. But really, the only one that I remember seeing that was actually designed for Flutter was the old MVSP. But when Scope Model became deprecated, that kind of fell by the wayside, didn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I quite like the shoe argument. I think that if we go back to Riverbud, I think it's one of the reasons why I made it myself, to try and make a shoe for your foot rather than taking a random shoe. Yeah, so otherwise, I think if you are speaking about testing in general with providers, you shouldn't have too many issues. As long as you put your providers in the tree enough that you can replace them when you need to in your test, you shouldn't have issues with testing. Yeah.
So next question is how hard it is to learn Riverpod after learning provider. Are they similar?
Yeah, they are extremely similar. It's basically, besides some minor syntax change, which is basically instead of inserting a provider inside the booted tray inside multi-provider, you declare it as a global variable, which sounds scary at first, but actually it doesn't. It's just a simple syntax change. Other than that, there is no difference at all. So if you liked inside the wooded tree, you shouldn't dislike as a variable outside. So yeah, model is just simple change. It's basically the same thing.
Okay, the next is the river pod suitable for all user cases, or are there any limitations?
It's a pretty broad question. I suppose yes, but then again, we can go with the argument about, is it fitting for you? Like, you can do anything you want to, but is it really the proper solution? So you should be able to do whatever you want. At least I think so. It's just that there may be some solutions that may be more efficient depending on your use case. So it's kind of difficult to say. But more generally, I would say for most of what you want to do, Robot should be simple enough for what you want to do without trading, like, testability and maintainability. So that's a good start, I would say. If you don't want to think too much about this, you could just try that without using too much time.
So I guess the next one is, what are the trade-offs of using state notifier plus river pod versus block?
By block, I suppose you would. That kind of depends on what block you want to talk about. Like, there is Felix block or the Google variant of block. There's so many different variants of block. I've personally never been really fond of the Google variant of block, the official one. I think it's too complex, and so yeah, for the Google one, I would say far too complex for most users, especially because you have to deal with streams and Eric start and everything. So we need something simpler. Then if you take a look at Felix block, and especially recently with Qubit. Qubit is actually quite close to state notifier, almost as a drop-in replacement. So in this sense, they are similar. The only difference would be that block in this package relies on provider, whereas state notifier is designed to be compatible with Riverpod. So you get the benefits of the issues that Riverpod fix over provider. But technically, I've seen some people try and implement providers for block in Riverpod. So you should be able to use whatever package you want to if you need. I don't think there is really any trade-off with replacing state notifier with block. You should be able to do both. Are very similar. So yeah, it should be fine.
Okay, the next, this is what are the biggest features missing from Riverpod?
I don't think there are any missing feature at this point. It's more there is a roadmap for further improvements, but in a way, it's not that they're missing. It's just that we could go further than we did before. One of the things I'm working on, well, actually there are two things that I'm working on. First, there is a dev tool, which shows kind of like with Redux in React applications, if you're familiar with it, which shows like your tree of states and how they are linked together. And you can also edit state and everything. So that's something that we currently don't have in Flutter. And another one is improving how we deal with accessing the state, storing the state in the database, simplifying it. Because I think we can do some improvements with the model of how Riverpod exposes the data. With the way it's designed, we can simplify this aspect. So I think that's something I want to explore. Yeah.
Next, I'm having trouble understanding the need for freezed or immutable data in general. Can you provide a scenario that might give an aha understanding?
I don't think there is really a haha understanding for immutable data. That's the biggest issue, is it? it requires some like using them to really understand what's the difference. It's kind of like if I said, you know, what's the difference with between a type language and not type language? You really have to deal with it yourself to truly understand the difference. I think overall the benefits are your application on the long run is easier to maintain, and it may be it may allow more performance optimizations depending on what you do, or it's more predictable. Like one of the issues with mutability is, for example, the state of your application can change at literally any time, and so when you're debugging a function, you may realize that at the beginning of the function, your variable is at some state. At the end of the function, it's inside another state, which can be quite confusing for larger functions. But if everything is immutable, you are guaranteed that at the beginning and at the end of the function, it's the same state. So it's easier to understand. And that using immutable data in general is kind of expanding this example to the entire application. You simplify, you reduce complexities that you have to deal with when thinking about how your code behaves. And then freeze on the top of it is like you technically don't have to use freeze to do immutable data in Dart. You can use the final keyword, which is what freeze rely on. The issue is like this works fine for a counter, but for larger applications, you have like hundreds of thousands of properties potentially. And so if you want to have such a huge state in your application, sometimes you may just want to change one property out of hundreds of properties. And so you can't really just copy the entire object manually because it becomes unsustainable. And so freeze is here to simplify copying objects to just modify some specific properties and making the code more readable in general. But you can think of freeze as just a workaround to language limitations. On the long run, technically, the package should disappear. As soon as we have data classes in Dart, you can just stop using freeze, in theory at least.
Okay, next question is if it's a good approach if I mix with the provider plus RX Dart because I'm using block art approach.
If you want to, sure. I wouldn't necessarily recommend that, as I'm personally not a fan of RX Dart and streams in general. I think that you can do whatever you want with this. It's completely fine. It's just that the learning curve and the complexity involved is too high, in my opinion, for what we want to do in Flutter. Like we're just modifying some state in a single thread. So like the benefits of using RX for multi-threading is kind of useless in the context of Flutter. And the complexity of dealing with streams, event loop, and whatever you involve with streams is usually too high for what we want to do. Like, for example, if you're using streams, you have to find workarounds to be able to access the current value exposed, because by default, streams don't expose the current value. So, like what Felix blocks does is do a wrapper around streams to expose the current value and do something to simplify the usage. But then you can't really say you're using streams. You're using something else. It's just using streams under the hood. So yeah, I'm personally not a fan of this approach. But if you like it, just go ahead.
Next question. It is easy to find out which parts of the GUI tree are being redrawn when a value changes. I'm trying a different library.
I remember, like, I think it depends on the dev tools you're using. Technically, the library will not help you here. But if you're using IntelliJ and maybe Flutter's dev tool, I know that that IntelliJ technically helps you by showing what widgets are currently rebuilding. I'm not sure if the feature still support it. I'm not using IntelliJ. So
well,
you can
sorry, Remy. There are a couple of ways. There's the old hacky way, which I used to use, which is you put a print statement in the build just before the return. Hey, I said hacky, right? But there's also this new cool thing that an intern with the Flutter team is working on called Layout Explorer. I just dropped it in the chat. It was just put to YouTube a few days ago, actually. And it does a lot of really cool stuff as far as examining your layout goes. My apologies for the noise here. I have a rather needy 10-year-old pit bull sitting beside me.
He wants to be part of the show.
That's it. Yeah. So anyway, yeah, that Layout Explorer looks very, very promising. I had a look at it the other day, and that might be exactly what you're looking for there when it comes to keeping track of what's going on in the UI. So, see, I was able to answer one.
Okay, next one is any software which needs support. What would you like to enhance more for RiverPod?
Yeah, I think overall, what I would like to work on in RiverPod is like this thing I mentioned previously with DevTool, and of course more examples and more documentation. Like right now, one of my biggest focus is documentation, because I think that we have all the features we need. So at least all the features that are critical, and so we can focus on documentation. Yeah.
And the next one is there any support for making a change to state that is delayed in a declarative way? I'm trying to avoid using futures.
Well, you can't really avoid using futures, I think. But yes, RiverPod helps you for this with future provider. Like we have technically future provider and provider, but it's just far not as flexible as in RiverPod. Like I have a few examples in the GitHub repository using it. Like they are almost all using exclusively future provider. You can do a lot more stuff than you could do before, and the way it ends up is very declarative instead of the old-fashioned imperative code. So I think it's an interesting approach. But you will still have to use futures for many different reasons.
Okay, so I guess we answer all the questions. If there are no questions anymore, if you have any and you want to unmute, oh, we have one. Which flavor of RiverPod do you recommend? RiverPod plus Uter hooks?
Flutter hooks.
Flutter.
It's Flutter.
I was
Flutter
wondering
hooks, yeah.
what is it? I said something new that I'd never heard, this Uter.
No, and that's a point you went into in the podcast, Remy, but I don't think we touched on here. There are some of your things that are designed to be used just with Dart, even outside of Flutter as well, right? So you need to, and not necessarily RiverPod itself, but I think that was more hooks, if I remember correctly.
To be used outside of Dart?
No, outside of Flutter, used in Dart. I think you have hooks.
Hooks are dependent on Flutter. Okay. But it's RiverPod that's not depending on Flutter. Yeah, okay. But for the question, I quite like hooks personally, but I know that many people are not necessarily liking hooks. And I think that since the latest version, I've introduced a new way to consume providers that has a syntax very similar to hooks without using hooks. So I think that's definitely that you can definitely forget about using hooks if you don't like them. You don't have to use them. So it's kind of your preference, I would say. I don't think there is any special recommendation to do here.
Okay, so I was answering in chat. Yes, we have a YouTube channel, and I will post the video, the recording. I will try to edit the two parts and add it together, so we have the full event for the YouTube streamers, for who joined late.
Okay, and if I could say one more thing, Linda.
Yeah.
Now, you all probably noticed that this was a bit more flying by the seat of our pants than usual. That is because what we took originally as a beginner's level overview of provider, I was joking with Remy in Slack, and I was basically asking him, where do we stand right now with the whole RiverPod thing? Does it look like it's going to be going that way? So maybe about an hour ago, I joked around and said, oh, haha, wouldn't it be cool if you joined via Slack and part of the presenting? Well, here we are. So we had about, and then we were trying to get him into Zoom at the same time that Linda was doing the opening announcements, or get him into the Hangout. So it was rather interesting. But then, Remy, thank you for coming, because what ended up happening was the entire presentation, the entire evening completely twisted around and went from beginner's level provider, which I did go through very quickly. If anyone here is a beginner and we kind of left you behind, I'm sorry, but I saw an opportunity here. There are a lot of advanced people, and I knew that things are going to go RiverPod's way. So I wanted to do the overview of provider very quickly and then get on to where we're going in the future. And that meant trying to give Remy as much time as possible. Remy, I'm sorry, but of course, with you here and with the presentation completely taking a hard left turn, all the questions went towards RiverPod, which I am in no way, shape, or form ready to answer. So thank you for handling all the questions except for one. I had your back on that one. So
yeah, you did a good job.
Thank you, Remy and Scott.
That's hopefully that explains some of the dynamic you've been seeing this evening.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Remy. Thank you, Scott, for sharing all your knowledge with our audience. Please don't leave, because we have another announcement for you, a very quick announcement. Thank you again for resisting until the end after all this storm we had to pass through. So I really appreciate it. And I will give the word to Dana to talk a little bit about the online hackathon, if you are interested.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Dana McMullen, and thank you so much to Linda and the whole GDG Capital Region team for giving me a minute here to speak. My name is Dana McMullen, and I'm a part of the operations team at Hack Upstate, where our mission is to advance Central New York and Upstate New York's technology community through education and events. I'm a graduate of Hack Upstate's first cohort of their Careers in Code Bootcamp. And this was aimed at helping women and minorities in poverty attain the skills that they need to acquire full-time software positions after 24 weeks of instruction. It was a great program, and I'm happy to say that I'm now working as a tech support rep at a medical tech company. I'm also part of the leadership team for Syracuse's Women in Code, and I'm a principal co-organizer for the Syracuse, New York chapter of Major League Hacking. And once again, also a part of the organizing team for Hack Upstate 15, woohoo, which is what I'm here to talk about. This year, due to venue restrictions and keeping safety as our top priority, we have moved forward by combining Hack Upstate and Hack Rochester into a single remote-first virtual event. We're proud to be hosting this event on October 3rd through the 4th of this year. We'll have opening and closing ceremonies, talks, and other interactions, and these will be held via Zoom and Slack. And of course, it will still be free to anyone and everyone who chooses to participate. So we hope to see you there. We're also planning on shipping shirts out to our participants. Everyone with access to the tools to attend a virtual event is welcome, and you can sign up at our website, which is hackupstate.com. You can feel free to contact us there or reach out to us with questions. And thanks again, everyone, and thank you, Linda and GDG.
Thank you, Dana. Can you share the link just in case if anybody is interested? Maybe I can copy it quickly here in the slide and share it.
Okay.
You never know, you find someone that here is interested. I participated 2 years ago, and with my team, we won 2 prizes. Our app won 2 prizes, so it was a pretty neat experience, and I really recommend it. And I want to thank once again to all the attendees, to our sponsors, to everything. I will send out a follow-up email as soon as I edit the video. I didn't know I will have to edit, but at this point I will have to edit the video. And by tomorrow you should receive an email with all the links shared in here, all the prizes, and I hope to see you soon. If you like to add anything to what was being said, please feel free. If no one has anything to add, I will stop the recording. If you like to stay to chit chat, to do a social chat, please feel free. I will still leave the chat a little bit, the channel open for a while. Okay.
The only other thing I can think of, Linda, that maybe add for people watching on video too is I understand that there may be a really, really big dev fest with a whole lot of GDGs behind it coming up.
Yeah, so, I wanted to talk about it, and I was supposed to add it to my slides, but I forgot.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm sorry, I wasn't supposed to say anything.
Yeah, I was supposed. So stay tuned. We are organizing a huge dev fest. Thank you, Scott, for reminding me. As Northeast region, we have like 12 or 13 GDGs joining us. Too bad I don't have the list with all of them. I have it saved somewhere, but
give me a second. I got it.
Yeah, I have it even myself. If you give me 1 second, I can share with you quickly the whole information. This happens when you don't do your homeworks, right? Correctly. Oh, 1 second. 1 second. I have so many accounts. And we will have great speakers. And also, can I reveal that you will be speaking to our Dev Fest?
I will be speaking, but I don't know on what yet. So.
That's okay. You will figure it out in the meantime.
That's okay. Remy and I changed what we were going to be speaking on like 5 minutes into the presentation. So I think that's about the time he got his microphone figured out, or the Hangouts. Give
me just 1 second. I want to take the sponsors from here if I can.
I got it. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's oh, and there you've got it right there.
Yeah. So the Dev Fest will be in October 31st from 10 to 2:30 p.m. The agenda will be, oh, let me see if I can make it bigger so everybody can see it. And we already have some great speakers already confirmed, but I want to keep it still. Soon we will have all the information in Meetup. We will have a website put up to the organizer communities are GDG New Haven, Cloud Philly, Cloud New York City, New I don't know how to say New
Brunswick.
North Jersey, New York City, Manchester, Bronx, Boston, Android, CR, and Capital Region. So stay tuned. We will have great content for you, and we will cover all the areas like cloud, Firebase, Flutter, and so on. So Chicago is missing. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I don't have an up-to-date list. I might check on it. So this is what Scott reminded me, and I should.
Well, wait, now if Chicago is getting in on the Northeast region, then why not Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati? Okay. There you go.
There we go. Okay, guys. It was really nice.
Although I don't know, we may have to go after 2:30 to fit in all these people and all these GDGs.
Maybe we will change the agenda, but so far we decided to go this way. We will see. So far, we don't want to bore people because being online, it's kind of difficult to keep everybody for hours stick next to the monitor, So we try to make it enjoyable for everybody. GDG is Google Developers Group. So yeah, great point. We try to keep it to make people understand it. Yeah, so you will find Mr. Zonstein, your city. So I will stop recording if we don't have nothing official to say, and if you like to still chat with us, please feel free. I will just 1 second. I will stop the recording. Thank you.